Washington State Democrats unveil a $78 billion budget with tax hikes on wealthy individuals, big corporations, let's push them away. And oh yeah, a property tax cap raise that's insane. It's insane. All in the name of helping out the little guy in Washington State. Nobody's going to want to retire here. Businesses aren't going to want to be operating here. Let's get into it. Let's see what the Dems have going. Here we go.
Well, Molly, state Democrats say they're just asking the wealthiest in the state to pay their fair share with these proposals. But Republicans on the other side of the aisle say the state needs to get its spending under control before they start looking at tax hikes.
Correct.
As state lawmakers work on the budget to help address a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit, some tough decisions are on the horizon. State Democrats are looking at ways to raise more than $6 billion in additional tax revenue from some of the wealthiest residents and companies in Washington state.
It is unacceptable that the lowest income Washingtonians pay at least 3 times more in taxes as a share of their income than our highest income households.
Senate
Nonsense. Nonsense.
Taxes on individuals with more than $50 million in financial assets and large employers with $7 million or more in payroll expenses.
I think when people start to think about this through the lens of that vast inequality, I mean, you're literally talking about people who could give the state $1 billion and probably not even notice it. It's a detail for.
How about the state cut spending by $1 billion on some nonsensical program that you've got going? What about that? Instead of taking money from people who've earned it legit, how about you cut expenses that we don't really need? We know we got a lot of them. We need to get Doge into Washington State. Wouldn't that be great? Elon, here you go. Let's take a look at the budget. Oh, here's what I've come up with.
Them in their portfolio.
Senate Democrats are also proposing raising property tax growth limits currently capped at 1% to instead grow by population and inflation.
They're already feeling the pinch at the grocery store. They're complaining about the price of eggs. They're complaining about the price at the pump. And so what's going to happen is if we add these additional taxes on, even to property owners, they're definitely going to feel it even more.
Multiple business associations in Washington, including the Seattle Metro Chamber of Commerce, warn these new taxes are harmful, and they're urging state Democrats to work on other solutions, saying in part, let's be clear, this budget shortfall is a self-inflicted crisis. Revenues are expected to continue growing over the next 4 years.
We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem, because our revenue has been growing over the years.
So you've got Democrats that just, want to do Democrat things like tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. Let's tax and spend our way out of everything. Let's just do that. But we're going to throw you a couple of bones. We'll cut $500 million off this. We'll cut this. Yeah, rightio. Washington lawmakers are gearing up for another big budget cycle. And since we're basically one of the bluest states out there, guess how this is going to go? Yeah, not that well. So where's all this money going? You got billion? 78.5 billion. It goes to some education, some social services and healthcare. You got billions going to children, families, low-income healthcare, Medicaid, behavioral health services. Lord knows we need that. State employee pay and benefits, nearly $2 billion will go towards increasing wages and healthcare benefits for state workers. Who pays? All right, so this is the super short breakdown here. Let's get my little guy to go here. Financial and tangible assets, $12.2 billion. A proposed tax on high-value financial assets like stocks and bonds. This is unrealized capital gains. Make that make sense. Unrealized capital gains. Because Democrats, through their lens of reality, think that everybody who has a big portfolio, let's just take from them. Let's just take from them. Nobody will say anything. You got a lot of heavy hitters here in the tech industry between Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on. Google. They're all here. They've all got individuals with high net worth. You start taxing them on proposed capital gains, unrealized capital gains tax, that is absolutely nutty. But I get it. They're just pushing out rich people. They don't want wealthy people to be here in the state of Washington. They want them to pay their fair share because they typically do not own businesses. They don't run payrolls. They don't understand the impact that this has on the overall economy. Then we've got payroll expense tax, $6.6 billion is going to raise. Tax on large employers based on total payroll costs. So if you've got a big payroll, you're going to pay. And that's where you hear these numbnuts go, well, if the wealthy just pumped in $1 billion, we wouldn't have to worry about. How about you just cut that billion from the budget? Figure out somewhere, because we know you got it in there. We know you got it in there. And then property tax reform, changes to property tax calculations aimed at raising more revenue. I mean, this is not a shocker. Democrats argue the proposal keeps Washington on a stable financial path because you're jacking things up. Crafting this budget required tough choices, thoughtful conversations. Hey, who can we squeeze here in Washington State? Oh, yeah. Because remember what happened when Tax Amazon with Shama Sawant, our socialist whatever, city council member? Remember what happened with Amazon? Yeah, Amazon said, we need headquarters too. Not going to be in Washington State. And they basically just did an end around Seattle. And they've continuously been moving those positions to Bellevue, where we don't believe in this nonsense. But because these are state programs, don't have too much of a choice. You're going to hook all these folks anyway. An all-cuts approach was never on the table, not when it meant turning our backs on schools, healthcare, and the basic services people depend on. There's plenty of money for those programs. There's just so much government waste, especially in Washington. I mean, this is a mini version of what's going on with Doge, right? Senate Republicans released a budget proposal 2 weeks ago without raising any new taxes. Huh, that's weird. No new taxes? Interesting. Their proposal is $75.6 billion in spending over the next 2 years using excess funding through the Working Families Tax Credit that's tied to Climate Commitment Act, the CCA. We just need to toss all that stuff because that's not going anywhere. It's like, yeah, that's not happening. I mean, you guys are already blowing up all the Teslas, right? So what are we doing? Climate Commitment Act? We've already got Climate Pledge Arena. What more do we need? Just some insanity, right? Let's go on to this one. Zombie tax increases. GOP representative derides Washington State Dems. I mean, it's if it wasn't my reality, which is I live in Washington State, and the more I think about it, the older I get. I am 56. I'll be 57 in November. The more I'm of the understanding, there's no chance I will be retiring here because between property taxes and just ridiculous things like unrealized capital gains, I mean, that is some real socialist nonsense. So, let's just take from the wealthy because they didn't earn it. It's like hearing people say that Elon Musk is a moron because he was just basically given money. And you're like, okay, yeah, I seem to remember him taking some massive risks along the way, like an insane man rolling the dice and coming up winners. And now you're mad that he's successfully built, 6 different companies? And he's taken, that chainsaw to the federal government budget? Yeah. States proposed budget calls for 6.5. Okay, let's get down to... Here's the proposals, a little bit broader scope. The proposed budget's new revenue includes a financial assets tax on individuals with more than $50 million in publicly traded assets. And you might say, well, screw those guys. But those are the guys that make all of the tech industry go here. Well, screw those guys. Well, yeah, no, that is the industry that is here. That is what has kept Washington State insulated from all kinds of nonsense because we've got so much technology and business going. But when you have numbnuts who've never run a payroll, who've never realized the impact of, well, here's what happens if you do something like this, you're just going to have companies move away. You're just going to have them move away. Oh, Washington State, that's a hard no-go. And that's why so many of these companies, came to Washington State is because you've got a crazy tech industry, started off with Microsoft with Bill Gates. And it's just basically exploded because things are so much cheaper here, housing-wise, cost of living, than California, which had Silicon Valley. So, you've got this massive progression that's happened. And now, because of governmental programs, Washington state needs the money, tax and spend, tax and spend. Where's that going to come from? Well, let's just hit up the billionaires and we'll see how it goes. So you got a 5% payroll expense tax on compensation above the Social Security threshold for employers with 7 million or more in annual payroll. It's a bunch of companies, and these companies are, they take these whacks and they're like, okay, well, where should we move to? Because they can. They know they can. You've got plenty of other options out there. Remember when we did the tax Amazon, and Shama Sawant did that, and Amazon decided to look for headquarters too, and AOC just basically shut down New York City. Just, no, we're not doing that. We're not helping the wealthy. Nice going, AOC. She's legit the leader of the Democratic Party at this point in time based on popularity and polls. AOC, nut job, AOC. Yeah, just... It also allows for larger hikes in property tax rates. Now, since Washington state doesn't have a state income tax, they gotta squeeze the money from somewhere. And they've got a 1% cap on property tax growth would be maintained, but increases based on inflation and population never to exceed 3% would be allowed. But what you've got there is if you tag inflation on top of whatever, you could be up 5, 6, 7%, no problem. So a 7% increase on your property taxes in 1 year. You could be looking at that. This is the big squeeze. That's the Democrat squeeze there, because they want your dollars from property taxes. And who's that going to impact the most? Those who can afford them the least. Nice going, guys. How about the landlords recognizing, okay, my taxes went up by XYZ. All right, rent going up a 2. We're going up, going to the moon, because you've already basically got legislation capping rent increases. So you're getting whacked from both sides with housing here. And you're already in a state with no affordable housing. No affordable housing. I'm a real estate guy. There's nothing. So you're constricting the supply of real estate. You're impacting it with additional taxation. You got a bunch of people hugging trees. Just covered that over in Seattle. We love our trees. And it's like, okay, do you want more housing? Which, you want this affordable housing, but then you don't want to cut down trees to do it? Literally. Just numbnuts. They're numbnuts. So the budget also repeals 20 tax exemptions. Okay, nobody cares about that. So here's a Republican. I know, it's a weird thing. Republican in Washington state. He was critical of the budget and what he referred to as zombie tax increases. He gave his thoughts on the new taxes in the Senate Democrats' budget. They've revived this so-called wealth tax. Oh, they love the wealth tax. Democrats love the wealth tax. Oh yeah, they got money. Let's take it from them. Which is the capital gains tax on unrealized capital gains. Capital gains tax on unrealized capital gains. Yeah. How's that work? Seriously, how does that work? All right, so you're up, but you haven't sold. You don't have a gain. You got nothing. You got a potential gain when you go to sell. That's what you've got, a potential. You've also got a potential loss if it goes down. And, goes down below what you purchased it for. Buy low, sell high. I mean, it's not that hard, right? So it's a tax on money you make selling an asset or investment when you haven't sold the asset or investment. That is the mentally disabled portion of Democrats. That's where they're like, oh, this is a good idea because I don't really have any money. So why would I care? Well, let's go ahead and hit up all these people. They're looking for ways to exploit the people who've put Washington state on the map. And they're going to push them all away. They're going to push normal, hardworking folks out of the market because taxes are going to go through the roof. Rent has already gone through the roof. I'm having this conversation on the regular. My rent's going up. It's like, yeah. Because because everything's going up and you're in a Democrat-run state where you have no supply of housing, you have no future supply of housing, you've constricted it so hard, you've made it so difficult to build here because you love your effing trees. All that kind of stuff goes into play, right? And so now you're going to have unrealized capital gains. Okay, all right, good luck with that there, sport. He noted, if I lose money on an asset or investment, this is still the Republican, if I lose money on an asset or investment, will they credit me? And the answer is no. They want credit here. So it's a one-way ticket. Absolutely. Can you imagine? Wealthy guy does 1 year's worth of tax returns based on state of Washington residency. Yeah, we're moving, honey. Let's go. Let's go. Walsh was critical of the payroll expense tax, essentially a statewide version of Seattle's jumpstart payroll tax. The defenders say it's a tax on the payroll of highly paid executives, he said. That's not what it is. It's a higher payroll tax than everybody, and it's the reason you've seen several businesses already moving out of Seattle and go across the bridge over to Bellevue, where I am, or wherever. Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, you know where it is. So that's the reality, but the Democrats don't care. They just care, how can we raise billions of dollars in taxation to go to our favorite whatever cause that doesn't really work? How can we do that? Well, tax the wealthy. Walsh saved his harshest criticism for Senate Democrats' plans for property taxes. So the real dog in the package is the increase in property taxes. And I should add, it's not just the 1% to 3%, he said. It's 1% to 3% plus an inflation factor. Plus an inflation factor. So it would actually be greater than 3%. And that's what I explained here just a few minutes ago, right? So property taxes, payroll taxes, unrecognized capital gains taxes. I mean, they spin this as if this is a good idea. Oh, this is great. This is going to save us from, doing a bunch of stuff. We're not going to have to make cuts. All right, but you're driving out business, numbnuts. That's what you're doing. They don't care. They could care less. They're like, well, we've got a budget. Well, we need to bring in that money. How are we going to do it? It's like, let's go, Brandon Johnson. Hey, let's do a $300 million property tax bill. Nobody votes for it. Nobody voted for it because it was harebrained. This isn't harebrained from the standpoint of them pitching it to people, because most people in Washington State, they understand they're going to get screwed. They understand that there's a high probability they're not going to be able to retire in this state because you're going to get stripped alive with taxation and a bunch of nonsense to pay for all of the ridiculous programs that a state like Washington, which has gone heavily blue. I mean, we went heavy blue in that last election. Right? We doubled down because we've looked around and we've seen how great California is doing. So we want some more of that progressive policy making. This is it. This is what pushes people out. Because eventually people are going to be like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense for us to be here. And you take out business after business after business. That's what you get. That's what you expect. But these folks don't care. They could care less. We balanced it. It's like, nah, you've got a budget that's gone way overboard and you could cut back on that budget, but you choose not to because you want to give a bunch of money away to people for ridiculous things. It's the way I see it. The real estate and unrealized capital gains, that is some real commie nonsense there. That's some commie nonsense. That's nonsense. That is mentally challenged. But that's the state I live in. And the way that I work it out in my head is somebody's got to stay here and do the Lord's work and report on this. Just a handful of us that are out there doing it. One of the ways I prepared for this podcast is I watched Brandy Cruz Undivided, and she does a great job covering local issues. And so I watched her podcast on this, and she understands local politics better than I do. My mind just literally, when I hear what's going to happen in Washington State, I immediately go to, oh man, I'd rather just take a beating than try and work through, what legislation is going through in Washington state. Because most of the time it is so disconnected from reality. And you're like, we're doing what? Why? It's like Democrats blowing up, lighting on fire, each other's Teslas. Make that make sense. I mean, seriously, make that make sense. I mean, we got a lot of Teslas here in Washington state. We've had a bunch of them burned up. And you're like, okay, got that. They don't like Elon, so they're going after Elon's cars, but really only Democrats drive Teslas, so they're bombing their own people's cars. Yeah, that's what it's like to live in Washington state. Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, socialism, here we come. Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, I got podcasts for days, weeks, months, years on this nonsense because it's not going to work. It doesn't work. It never works out. Look at California. Look at the policy they've got going on there. Hey, how's homelessness going? Oh, it's not that great. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.